Going to do today is have a look at the Mixpanel API, more specifically at the /events endpoint. If you look into the API documents of Mixpanel, you'll see that on the event section there's mainly two API endpoints. One is the importing events, which ends at the endpoint /import, which is mainly used in order to load historical data. If you would like to put things in production, then Mixpanel recommends to use the /track endpoint. A couple of important elements here. This is meant for server-side connections or server-side data transactions, whatever you want to call it, sending in server-side data, right? The important part is that it's designed to be used whenever there is no out-of-the-box server-side SDK for Mixpanel. Imagine that your backend is built on Ruby, on Python, on Node. Then basically they recommend to use those specific Mixpanel SDKs. If you have a technology in your backend that is not supported by a Mixpanel SDK, then Mixpanel recommends to use this one. Why are they mentioning this explicitly? Because SDKs do provide concepts such as queuing, retrying, batching, etc., while this API endpoint absolutely does not, right? What we're gonna do is we're gonna try to send in our very first event. Our project that we're using today is in a European-based project, so it's on the AU servers of Mixpanel, which is important to note because the endpoints for the APIs are actually different. So make sure that you use API-AU or API if you are based in the US. What we're gonna do then is we're basically gonna send in a very simple test event. This is a test event. Oops. Obviously, we're not respecting any naming conventions here. This is just for the sake of testing, right? So we're kind of creating a couple of junk events. I'm aware of that, but it's just for the sake of the exercise. What we need to fill in next is the project token. I've written that down here already. Oof, so that's gonna go in here. Then we need to fill in the time. For time, we're using an UTC epoch. Expression, let's say. I'm using this website, so I'm just gonna refresh so I get okay. Poof. Actually, this is copying everything over, which is good. Poof. We're gonna do it this way. Tac. Time is now set to exactly a couple of seconds ago, expressed in epoch. We're gonna create this distinct ID. This distinct ID is an API tester. You know this, right? We're using server-side events, which means that there's no concept of anonymous ID, meaning that we need to set a distinct ID ourselves, typically a user ID or distinct ID as Mixpanel asks. In other technologies or in other concepts, it's also called an external ID. It's the ID that users get attributed within the world of your business, right? I'm just going to use API test as a value. And then we're going to use an insert ID. An insert ID is basically a string that is a equivalent of a message ID. If you start uploading messages into Mixpanel, at some point it could happen that you lose connection or something goes wrong and that some of the events are not accepted. Now imagine that you have an enormous amount of events. It would be a horrible task to figure out like which event made it into the API and is ingested by Mixpanel and which event did not, right? We can basically replay that entire batch of events, and what Mixpanel will do is it will look to the insert ID, and it remembers all of the events and all of the insert IDs associated with it. And if it has seen that insert ID in the last 24 hours, it will simply drop that event, which means it's super important to get unique insert IDs for every event you're sending, right? What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna ABCDEFGHIJKL, just gonna randomize this a bit. And actually, if I would just now press this button, it would be fine because most likely I think I'm logged in, so they know where everything needs to go. And I've used this before. And my project ID is here. So I'm just gonna give this a quick try. And so normally, if all goes well, the event with the name, where's my event name? This is a test event, should hit my project anytime soon. Whoops, this is the event tab that I need. You've seen that I've been testing for a while already, and poof, here is my event. API test. This is a test event. Very interesting though, because if I would simply retry this, it would not appear. What I need to do to make it appear is actually, is I would need to change the insert ID. So I've added a 1. If I now send it, you'll see that the second event with the exact insert ID would have not made it into Mixpanel, but this one would have. What we're going to do next, I'm just going to show you how to do this using Postman, because it's always fun to test a bit with Postman and not to rely on this, right? What we first need to do is we need to create a service account. A service account is created by going to TrackLab, your project settings basically. I call my project TrackLab, that's why I'm saying TrackLab. We go to service accounts, and then we add a service account. I'm just gonna call it API test. I'm gonna give it all the rights. Oops, API test, should have pressed enter. You can set an expiry date, which is always handy, and for security reasons you usually should do it. I'm just gonna remove mine manually afterwards. So these are my tokens and secrets, right? I'm going back to the developer pages. I'm gonna copy all of this out here, and I'm gonna open up Postman. And in Postman, I'm gonna say, where are you, buddy? I'm gonna go to File and then Import, and I'm gonna paste this as raw text. I'm gonna paste this. This link is completely wrong. I'm gonna paste this as raw text. Poof, paste it in, import. And so what you see in the body is that a couple of headers have been set, which is all great. In the body, the payload is there, and then I'm gonna go to authorization. I'm gonna say basic authentication. It's actually loading a previous service account that no longer exists. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna load this one in here, poof, and I'm gonna load this one in here. And now we should be ready to send things. However, there's one thing I need to change, right? Because my insert ID actually is the same as the one I already sent, so Mixpanel will drop this event. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna insert ID. I'm just gonna change it, and I'm gonna send this event. And now we can have a look at what's going on in Mixpanel. Getting lost here. So what you've seen is that there's actually 3 events coming in at the same time, which is normal because I didn't change the epoch timestamp, right? What you see here is that what you need to know is that if the epoch timestamp is the same, Mixpanel is just gonna sort this randomly, okay? That's why my last event that I've sent through Postman is actually the last. Then this is the original one I've sent, and then this is probably the one that I've sent with the 1 behind it, exactly. And so what we see is that this is a test event. It's there 3 times, even though I've sent it 4 times, remember? And I can actually, using the same epoch timestamp, the same insert ID, I can actually keep sending it. It wouldn't matter. This event will be dropped for the next 24 hours by Mixpanel because it remembers that I've sent it in. That's it. Hope this was useful, and thank you very much.